Вы слушаете SBS Russian.
Today we are talking about a new movie, Oleg, directed by Australia's Nadia Tass. This is a documentary about a Soviet and Hollywood actor, Oleg Vidov. Good day, Nadia, and welcome to SBS Russian.
Hello, IRINA. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you here, too. Tell us a little bit about your film, please. How did you know Oleg Vidov's story, and why did you decide to make a movie about him?
I have spent a lot of time in Los Angeles with my career, working, for Hollywood pictures. And while I was there, I happened to meet Oleg Vidov. And so since then, for about 8 years, we used to meet for coffee and lunches and really struck up a wonderful friendship. And we found that we had a lot in common. We both loved Russia, and he always said that I retained a Russian soul, and so that was the thing that was binding us. And he expressed that he loved my work. So Oleg and I became very good friends. Sadly, in 2017, he died. And then Joan Borston, his wife, she decided that she was going to turn his autobiography into a movie, into a documentary about his life, because he did have an extraordinary life.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
So she knew that he would want me to do it, so she contacted me. And that's how I became the director of Oleg Vidov, the documentary.
Yesterday, I told my friend about Oleg Vidov, and he couldn't believe that it was a real story, the story of his life. He thought that it was a fiction.
No, it's not fiction. It was real, and he was real, and he was a wonderful Russian. He never stopped being Russian. Yes, he escaped in 1985 because he was being tortured under the USSR regime. Really, he would have, if he didn't escape, he would have ended up in the Gulag or possibly, killed. So he escaped under duress, and even when he eventually got to Los Angeles. And he was being offered, he was a wonderful actor. And the films that he made in Russia or under the USSR regime were wonderful films. He didn't want to partake in the films that only, talked about communism. He didn't want to be part of the political system.
And how dramatically it happened that he got married with this woman who was the best friend of Brezhnev's daughter.
Yeah. Well, he got married. They saw him at a fancy cafe one time, and Miss Brezhneva, she introduced Natalia Fedotova and Oleg. And they connected. There was synergy between them. But that was his undoing. That was the big problem because, she wanted him for his stardom, for his money, and then eventually she demanded that he become the Minister for Culture, that he be considered for the Minister for Culture. And she was so high up in the party that a lot of people around her from the party wanted the same thing because of the profile that he would bring to that position. And she said, I'm an actor and a filmmaker. I'm not a politician. I'm not going to do that. And that was the turning point. That was the point at which the whole system turned against him and they hounded him. They persecuted him. And she was vile, and she got the divorce without him actually even knowing that he was divorced, that they divorced. and she took everything from him, and he was destitute on the streets. From that point, the only thing that he wanted to do was really escape and find his freedom. He wanted to live by the code of freedom. Of course, to be part of a community that pays taxes and is a good citizen, but at the same time, to make up your own way of living, you know, the way we live in the West, I guess. He searched for his freedom, and he escaped from Russia. He went to Yugoslavia. He went via Ljubljana. He went to Austria. Then that was an incredible crossing of the border from Yugoslavia into Austria. That was the big moment. And that's the big moment in the film that I actually directed from I was here in Melbourne at the time because we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I cast it in Slovenia with a full crew for shooting. And I cast it with the right actors and found the locations. And it was all through this system called Q-Take. And then I used Zoom to communicate with my assistant who was there. So I shot it via remote and finally finished the film in April 2021. So now it's out, and it's at the Cinefest Film Festival, Cinefest Oz, and it won the Rhode Island Film Festival for documentary, and it was at the Moscow International Film Festival. I'm so proud that it was there, and the people's reaction was just so amazing, because a lot of people thought that he just left. You know, he had a huge fan base.
Yes.
And even though the USSR didn't really want a star system, it was inevitable. This man was such an enigma on the screen that in the USSR he was the star of cinema in the 60s, 70s, 80s, right up until 85 when he escaped. So it was at the Moscow International Film Festival, and it's at the United Nations International Film Festival, and I'm really proud of the fact that it's going to be there. He testified in front of Congress when he got to America, and he just basically talked about being a free citizen, that really, and always he had an open heart for Russian people who knocked on his door. So he and Joan had an open house. Whoever needed help would come to him, and he would help them set themselves up until they could be independent. So this was my friend Oleg, who I adore.
Nadia, thank you so much for this interview, and thank you for sharing the history of your friendship with Oleg. I wanted to ask you if he ever went to Russia after the Soviet Union was over?
Yes. After Perestroika, he went to Russia, yes, and he was in Moscow, and he saw how depleted the animation series and the animators in Russia were. You know, they absolutely had no career. It was so awful, and he felt compelled to, pick up the animation, all the animation series, to take out the rights to it. He took it with him, and together with Mikhail Baryshnikov, they revoiced it with top actors like Amanda Plummer and Jessica Lange and Bill Murray. So they revoiced it and they restored it. So it was Oleg who really did, the majority of the work. He was the one who restored the whole series, and then he sent it out into the world. They sent it out into the world so that the world could understand that Russia has an incredible culture. It's the culture is musical, the culture is theatre, cinema, literature. A lot of people who come from the USSR or even Russia They get to America and they realize that the majority of people there, they think that Russians are just KGB agents and these big monsters. And so the stories, the films that were being made when Oleg got to America were really depicting the Russian persona as someone who was, hard and wild and rough. These were the characters that were being offered to him to be in the movies, and he rejected them. And some of the casting was really strange because Oleg is physically just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so he would turn up to the auditions, and the casting people would say, "Oh, you're not Russian, you must be something else, Scandinavian or whatever." And he said, "No, I am Russian." And we exist. Cultured people exist from Russia. We have a strong culture. And so this is why Oleg worked on the animation series, so different generations, starting from children, could start looking at animation from Russia with all the fairy tales and the Russian children's stories. And these were just so dear to me. These were things that I absolutely loved. This was his way of giving back to a culture that he loved so much.
Nadia, thank you so much. Thank you. It was my pleasure to host you.
Oh, Irina, thank you. And I hope,
yes, sorry.
I hope that, Russians all over Australia will tune in, will go online and find the links for Cinefest Oz, for Oleg's story, which is a documentary, and they will find a lot of interesting things there about the period that he lived. From the very beginning, from his birth in 1943 right through until 2017, I cover that whole area. And they'll find different comments on politics and history of cinema in Russia, and I think they'll find it interesting.
I also think so. They can watch this movie until Monday, 30th of August, right?
Yeah, they can. And I hope you get to see it, and I hope you enjoy it. But I'm very proud of it because it really does show the Russian soul in the right perspective, and not just, having lived in Hollywood, I know what the notion is there about, how rough they think that Russian people are, which is wrong.
Well, thank you, Nadia, for the film and for the interview, and have a lovely day.
Ирина, спасибо.
Спасибо.
Хотите услышать больше таких историй? Это можно сделать через Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify или в любом приложении для подкастов.